Stop the world!
Welcome to this special episode of ASPI's podcast, Stop the World. I'm David Rowe, and I'm here with Daria Impian-Barto, one of our analysts who's going to tell us about an important new piece of research that ASPI has just released. Daria, thanks for joining us.
Hi, David. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
So the report out today is titled Truth and Reality with Chinese Characteristics, the building blocks of the propaganda system enabling Chinese Communist Party information campaigns. As the name suggests, there's a lot in it. Daria, can you just start by giving us a bit of a snapshot of the key takeaways?
Sure. Both the report and the website it comes with it are comprehensive and detailed, but in substance, they shed light on a huge network of mostly Chinese companies that are collecting data on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party. The report concludes that Beijing is feeding this data into its propaganda apparatus to refine it and, as we say, build the blocks of future information campaigns.
Okay, so let's dig into the issue of the sharing of personal data. A lot of people using TikTok or Temu, and there are a lot of them, various other Chinese apps like gaming apps might be wondering, what does it matter that my data is being held in China? I'm just not that interesting, so who cares? We all think we're not very interesting. We all suffer from that. It seems to provide an answer, however, this research to that question. Why is people's personal data actually of use? So can you explain that? Why is a Temu or a TikTok user's personal data useful to propaganda efforts, and why should we be worried about that?
Well, the single user's data is not necessarily at the core of this issue, but it's what all of those users' cumulative data can be used for. Most companies would use it for advertising, for example. The CCP, on the other hand, aims to leverage various entities across media, gaming, AI, and other emerging technologies to gain access to data that it deems strategically valuable for its propaganda system and its ongoing information campaigns. A key example that the report has revealed is the online shopping platform Temu. This is a hugely popular app around the world. A Roy Morgan survey, for example, which was released a couple of months ago, found that 1.26 million Australians use the app every single month for their shopping. It was the most downloaded free iPhone app in the US in 2023, and it has more than 77 million active users in the US monthly. Temu is operated by Wellco Technology Limited, which is in turn a subsidiary of the Chinese e-commerce giant PDD Holdings. This company is a corporate partner of another company named People's Data, which appears to focus on data sharing between government, enterprises, and institutions. And its partners include China's Ministry of State Security, the Ministry of National Defense, and the Ministry of Culture and Tourism. This is just an example of how the database was compiled, following all of these links to provide better transparency about these companies that, like Temu, have a global presence. The report concludes that through these links, companies like Temu collect large amount of data that is likely to be shared with the CCP's propaganda system. And it states that the Chinese government thereby effectively gauges the pulse of public opinion and gains unprecedented insight into societal trends and preferences. To summarize it, data can provide an extremely powerful tool to shape, manage, and control the information environment both inside and outside China. That would ultimately impact our own democratic processes, altering the ways in which we access information and therefore the ways in which we perceive truth and reality. And that is why we should care.
Yeah, it's fascinating and terrifying. It's certainly making me care. Talk a bit about how widespread this is and what it's all leading to. The report talks about a kind of paradigm shift from what it calls party-controlled media to, quote, party-controlled data. What kind of system is the Chinese government looking to create here? Can you just explain this concept of party-controlled data?
So the CCP, like most other political entities, faces a constantly evolving information landscape, and it adapts to it and its strategies to it accordingly. The way in which it is differentiating itself, though, as you said, is encapsulated in a comprehensive or all-of-society approach that is centered around party-controlled data, or 党管数据. This means that the party sees data in an expansive way, not simply as a source for commercial exploitation, but as a strategic asset that can be used in its propaganda efforts. By exercising control over data, including data controlled from subsidiaries operating outside China, the CCP can gain unprecedented insight into societal trends and preferences.
There are some other elements to the report, notably the use of generative artificial intelligence to create more powerful propaganda, and then the use of tools like gaming platforms or environments like the metaverse to deliver that propaganda. What does the report tell us about the scale of the investment that the Chinese government is making in these technologies so that it can use them for strategic gain?
The report doesn't really look at the amount of money that each entity is receiving from the propaganda department or its affiliates. However, by looking at the amount of companies and other entities that are linked to the propaganda system in many different ways, this can give us a pretty good idea of how expansive the effort has become over the years. The website for our project is interactive, so everyone can explore the various entities and their connections with each other and with the CCP's propaganda system. The data collected in it is divided into 4 categories, and one of them is generative AI that you mentioned. In this section, readers will be able to get an idea of how much the CCP has successfully integrated generative AI into its propaganda efforts, leveraging it to enhance the efficiency and quality of its digital content. Despite regulations aimed at controlling the spread of misinformation, in China, the state retains significant control over the use of generative AI, utilizing it as a tool in its information warfare arsenal. An example of this massive investment is the China Internet Investment Fund, which, as our graph shows, funnels into 5 massive clusters of tech companies specializing in AI.
So the big question then now is, what can we do about all of this? I mean, until relatively recently, democratic governments have assumed that digital technologies will be liberating, but clearly here we're talking about a powerful apparatus that takes data from global users and enables Beijing to effectively weaponize that against democratic rivals. So it's a kind of terrifying loop or reversal of what we take to be harmless, fun technology. So what does the report say that we should do to protect ourselves against this?
So the report, like most of our ASPI report, is very policy heavy and has very detailed policy recommendations, especially for governments. So I won't take too much time expanding on that. The highlights that I would like to mention, though, regard due diligence and the pressure that democratic governments should exert on tech companies to conduct more thorough reviews of their digital supply chains. Basically, the more transparent and secure the companies and technologies that we rely on are, the better. This includes Chinese companies. We also need more policy attention to the regulation of technologies used for surveillance and related immersive technologies, especially one that focuses on future societal and national security implications. Internationally, government should also work to standardize the ways in which data is shared and proactively, focus on that word, regulate how it can be produced and stored. And finally, I'd like to add that civil society can also have an important role in this to ensure that we establish effective guardrails against malign actors that are attempting to shape the information environment. Enhanced media literacy in all sectors of society, as well as campaigns focused on critical thinking that target individuals and communities at large, will be key in addressing this issue.
Yeah, it's an extraordinary piece of work. I believe something like 18 months or 2 years in the making. So hopefully this has been a useful teaser for listeners to go and check out the report themselves, which they can find on our website, aspi.org.au. And there's an accompanying article summarising the work on our commentary and analysis site, The Strategist. So Daria, thanks for giving us that quick breakdown of this very significant work.
Thanks for having me, David.
And to our listeners, thanks as always for joining us. This has been a special short episode, and we'll be back tomorrow for our normal weekly edition of Stop the World.